Two legendary detectives.
He was nothing but a sexual deviant. He did everything for sexual purposes.
The family knew something. Was there really intent to kill JonBenet?
If they acquiesced to his commands, they lived. If they didn't, they were killed. And he killed the obstacle, which was the men.
People get killed in my house. My kids are in that house.
We filed 14 counts of murder. There was one case that stood on its own.
I'm curious. Here's this guy who thinks he's going to go away with a perfect murder.
He hired the two guys and they prosecuted him, but they never got the two guys that actually killed him.
How do you not go into the house after a crime scene and not find the body on the first day?
We solve cases the old-fashioned way, 3 S's: scotch, snitches, and shoe leather.
Two legendary detectives with the stories and the history and the perspective that comes along with it. We're talking legends, Gil Carrillo and Tom Lange in studio today. Welcome, everybody, to Tom Zenner Scandal. I'm Tom Zenner. This is my co-host on 1 Degree of Scandalous, the one and only Cato Kalin.
Hi, I'm Cato.
31 years ago, Cato met Tom Lange through the O.J. Simpson saga. Hard to believe it's the 30-year anniversary of that. Gil Carrillo, along with his partner Frank Salerno, tracked down Richard Ramirez and the Night Stalker. Two of the biggest crimes ever. O.J. Ramirez, they're here today. The guys that were in the middle of it. It's so exciting to have you here.
And they have something in common, too. Both stars in the Netflix series.
Yes.
I was in one of those with Tom Lange.
Yep.
Now I'm sitting in the front seat with Tom. Last time I was in the back seat. So things have gotten a lot better for me.
Things are looking up for you, Cato. K-Trade.
I can't believe this because it's like a part 2, the best part 2 show of ever.
Yeah. Go back and watch our previous episode with Gil and Tom. It was unbelievable. We also had Tom for one a couple weeks ago. Make sure you watch that and all the episodes we have. It's always a treat to have you in here. You know, Cato mentioned it. You guys you get recognized. You go through airports, people are going to know who you are because these were very successful docu-series on Netflix. The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, and of course the OJ one. But you guys have been involved in other cases too, done tons of other interviews. What's life like? Can you make money as an ex-superstar detective? I mean, I'm sure it's not huge bucks, but do some residuals come in for these things? I mean, you guys made those shows. Do you negotiate? Do you have an agent? How does it work?
With mine, you know, a lot of production company, a lot of people have dreams, you know, and they pipe dreams. They want to do this, they want to do that. Nothing ever gets done, and I never sign anything. I don't do anything. When the realities are, a family friend of mine, he was a deputy and he got injured, and I knew his uncles, they were cops. So he was now writing. He was writing with a program called Chicago PD, which is still on TV. He doesn't write for them anymore. And he went from there to the Mayans. He was writing for the Mayans. And one of his co-writers was a guy named Tim Walsh. And Brian called me up and he says, you know, Gil, if you look at TV today, he says, Mexicans are on there and Hispanics they're all thugs, gangbangers, dopers, killers, murderers. You know, there's nobody out there to look up to. And I've been talking about you, you know, and you were successful in what you did. And he says, I think there's something there. Would you have dinner? So I went to a nice dinner place for him. We had dinner and I came home. The wife said, well, how'd it go? I said, well, I met a new friend, had a good steak, had some wine. It was a great night. What they want to do, you know, what do you want to do? I told them, honestly, I don't give two shits about television. You know, I just have fun in life. And that was the end of it. And then about a year later, Tim Walsh calls me up and he says, hey, would you be willing to go out to dinner? So I went out to meet him. I had dinner with him and Tiller Russell.
Yeah.
And Tiller Russell, I don't know what to expect when they talk about producer, director. Old gray-haired guys with buns and
ponytails. Yeah.
And I met him, and he was a young-looking guy, and shook hands, and hey, brother, how's it going? He talked. It was fun. It was a great conversation. He said, okay, Tim's right. I want to do this. And would you be willing to do a documentary on the Night Stalker? And I had enjoyed his company. I said, yeah, I'm in. He says, okay. He says, well, here's what we're going to do. He says, here's how I want to write the story. Here's what I want to. I said, I don't care. Don't tell me. You're the professional. And he says, okay, well, when it comes time for editing, we'll call you in. You can be part of the editing. I said, no, you guys are professionals. You just let me know when it drops, and I'll watch it. And he says, okay, I'll have our attorneys call you up. And I said, you don't have to get your attorneys right away. You know, look, hey, I promise you I won't do anything else. There it is. There's my guarantee. We shook hands. And then later on, when it comes time for attorneys, I said, you'll have one. And I didn't have an agent, didn't have an attorney. Frank, who had gone through this stuff before, Salerno, he had an attorney. And so one of the guys from the Netflix side said, tell you what, we really like you. You know, you can get an attorney, or I'll just give you the same contract that Frank's attorney's gotten for him, and you don't have to worry about it. Done.
Save the attorney fees.
Yeah, that's what he said. Save the attorney fees. So done deal. And that's how it came about. I had nothing to do with it. I just went along with it, and they got what they wanted.
I realized one thing, that having Gil on the show now a few times, nobody has more dinners than him.
Every dinner has wine. We had a great breakfast with wine. That was awesome.
I
had
love
an
that.
omelet with
Everybody
some
sitting out
Cabernet.
to these dinners. That's fantastic.
Good for you. You deserve it. And you know Tiller, whether you know it or not, because he was part of the Manhunt series of O.J. Simpson on Netflix. He's been involved in all the big ones with Michael Radutsky, our friend, another Milwaukee native.
He's good. He's really good.
Yeah, and you get hit up all the time, Tom. I mean, you've been on so many shows.
I've been approached a lot of times. I'm not out there. I don't want to be out there. I'm not an actor. Years ago, this producer came to me and said, I'm going to do a series of one of these histories, mysteries things. Mm-hmm. So we did a 4-part series, Lizzie Borden, John Dillinger, Billy the Kid, and there was one other. They were old-time serial killers, actually, if you look at Billy the Kid and
Jack the Ripper?
This type of thing. The one Jack the Ripper was another one of the old Western sites. Anyway, we did these series, and they said, we want you to be a homicide cop today and tell us how you would handle a case back then, like Lizzie Borden. We went all the way back to Fall River. It's kind of a neat production. But he kept cutting and saying, listen, this is what we need. We need this. I said, I'm not an actor. I don't like acting. I don't want anything to do with it. And my wife was there for a couple of them we did. She says, yeah, you got to put yourself into it. I says, it's not me. I can't do it. So those, we did all those, and they were pretty successful, and they look good. But ever since then, people want this and they want that, and you got to put yourself into it. It's just not my personality. Why do I do these things? Well, if you are well-known, you're going to see more bullshit about yourself than reality. And I wasn't going to take that. To this day, we have people lying about Simpson. Very well-known attorney on Fox. Everybody likes Fox. It's right-wing. It's this, that, and the other. But they hired a far-left guy named Alan Dershowitz, who they have now owned and probably gets paid a lot of money to spout whatever he spouts. He still lies about evidence in the Simpson case. There was no blood planted in the Simpson case. There was never any evidence of that. In fact, the evidence was just to the contrary. Nobody at Fox will confront him. So I'm pissed at Fox. I don't do Fox anymore because of that.
Wow.
Bottom line is, the reason I do any of this stuff, the books and everything else, are to put right what is wrong. But people have lied about, made up stories and everything else. That's why I do all of these things, to clean the air. That's why I do these things. This is the way it really happened.
Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned other murders, like, Lizzie Borden, Tom. It was famous. It was Lizzie Borden had an axe, gave her husband 40 whacks, the whole thing. So it's different murders. You had Dillinger, who got killed in Wisconsin, and or actually the cabin,
Chicago.
the big shootout in Wisconsin. Yeah. That was his resort. What are other crimes that have happened that you guys might have opinion on? Speaking of that you had other things, like JonBenet. That's an older case. I'm sure you're familiar with JonBenét Ramsey.
Unsolved. 30 years later, which is unbelievable.
It's legally it's unsolved. I won't mention this guy. Very well known. You could probably figure out who this is. A very well known criminalist. Once gave me an opinion on who did this, and I don't know. I'm not familiar with the evidence, but they said he thinks the brother was involved. Now, I don't know why he said this. This is a very well-known criminalist you may have heard of in a very well-known case, Cato, who has this opinion, which I value. I don't care for what the way he handled himself in this particular case, but he had some good opinions on that because he saw the evidence. And I can't make any call on something that I don't know anything about the evidence.
Well, and I'll just add this to this. I mean, obviously CBS felt strongly enough about the evidence to do a show on prime time on a Saturday night, and with that same theory, and they end up getting sued big time. And the backstory to this is Cato had a show that he had sold to CBS, right?
Well, it was on they loved it, and it was good.
Yeah, and it was going to happen.
It was that day, everything stopped.
And because of that lawsuit, it changed how CBS was doing their programming and
Oh,
what kind of budget they had.
I didn't have but yes, they very much loved what I.
You had something on Benét Ramsey? I didn't know.
No, different show.
Because of what
The
happened.
fallout.
Oh, okay.
The fallout.
There was
from
a
it.
huge fallout.
Right.
I spoke with this unknown
Criminalist.
that my colleague speaks about, and I'd lectured with him before. We'd done some stuff together, and I was in trial. I think I was in trial, and he was out here looking at. He was in my office, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I'm here looking at this case," and it was one of my old cases. He says, "I just found out because I was not working at my then partner. I was in trial, so she was working it. The decedent family had big bucks, so they hired him to come over and look at the case, look and see what we had done, see if there was anything we had missed." And he looked at it, he says, "I just realized in the end that you were part of this case." And I told him, "Stop. You know, he's on it. He's done this. He's done everything. Everything on here is done correct. If I'd have known he was on it at the beginning, I'd have saved you money. I wouldn't have come out here." He said about the OJ case that he wanted, because it was a defense that called him out here, and he wanted to speak to the unknown female prosecutor on the OJ case and wanted to say, "Hey, if you ask these questions, this is what they're going to ask me." And he told me, he says, she didn't want to talk to me because he had been called by the defense. She wanted nothing to do with me, wouldn't listen to me. Had she listened to me, things wouldn't have been as slanted, wouldn't have looked as bad as they did for the prosecution side for that case. And I saw the documentary that he did, because that one they got sued over, and they sure give a compelling case for what they got sued over, you know, for the kid. And I trust this unknown doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I consider him a friend. We even went out to dinner,
And he showed up in your office, so you saw and heard some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, this one is so complex if you think about it. This poor girl deserves justice, and she never got it. And she was paraded around like this little beauty queen.
He told me we talked about the OJ case and the case that I was working. We didn't talk about JonBenet.
Got it. Okay, got it. But, you know, I'll just put a bow on that one. Tom, based on your whatever, you know, theory or however you want to define it, I mean, the parents had to know. They had to know.
Just going to say, obviously, the family knew something that we're never going to know. Obviously.
And then they took a tremendous amount of heat, thinking it might have been them, right? And the mom, Patsy, dies of cancer. Mm-hmm. John's still alive.
You have to ask yourself, was there really intent to kill JonBenet? Probably not. Maybe not. Maybe something went awry, an accident.
But how do you have an accident with the type of knot that they had in the rope?
Well,
all I know is that the crime scene, you know, Tom hit on it earlier, maybe on one of his previous interviews that I've heard, where small town police departments not used to handling homicides, and they're not used to what it takes, the expertise. From day one, with everybody that was going through that crime scene and how they missed and how the neighbor and the guy went down there, Mr. Ramsey went down there and found the body, was unconscionable. You know, so that was screwed up from the very beginning. And then it's got to make you think right from the very beginning. One of the first things I thought of is, why do they both need separate attorneys? The husband and the wife. You know, that struck me as why.
Mm-hmm.
And
the ransom note, there's just so many elements of that one that, man, if we knew the truth.
Well, and how do you not go into the house after a crime scene and not find the body on the first day? How do you not go over every inch of the basement where it was hidden? That didn't make sense. Was it not there before, or they just never looked in that one room?
I think they're just so unsophisticated. I think they're just not used to it.
How do you miss I don't know.
I watched the Balloon Boy documentary on Netflix. Remember Balloon Boy, like 2002, where the balloon took off. The kid was allegedly in it. It was a huge story back then. But the police there, and it was also in Colorado, believe it or not, they searched the house 3 times and said the boy wasn't in there, which made them believe that it was in the balloon flying around, and he was actually in the attic. So my thought all along, too, because you're starting behind the 8 ball times 10 if they trample the crime scene. And they contaminate the evidence. Yeah. You can never use it, right? And then they're so busy covering their ass because they knew they were in over their head. So then it was a PR game almost for them.
There's always an answer. It's just sometimes we don't get it. It's an imperfect world. It's a messy world. Homicide is messy. You're not going to get your answers. But again, there's not one case that can't be solved. And again, you look at this isolated. The family has got to know something. The answer is with the family.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get it for all the reasons we've discussed.
Mm-hmm. No. And the only people living now is John and the son, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Gil, I'm curious because we just went through the Koberger case where here's this guy who thinks he's going to get away with a perfect murder, plans it out, takes the criminology classes. You know, we've had Howard Bloom on our show a couple times.
He was a guy of master's.
This guy is just a sick twist to the nth degree. But he literally, from what it sounds like, thought that he was going to plan and carry out this perfect murder, right? That he could get away with it. When you were chasing Richard Ramirez, and, by murder number 7, 8, 9, he has to know you're on their tail. Your names are in the paper. You're connecting dots here. And you spent time with him after he was arrested, and you watched every single day of the trial in person. What was his motivation? Was it a game for him?
Oh, I hearken back, and once again, this is purely speculative, but what I learned in college, he was nothing but a sexual deviant. He did everything for sexual purposes. He wasn't a burglar. He wasn't a hype. He did use cocaine. He did use weed, but it was sexually motivated, driven. He sat there and wanted something. He went out, said about it. He did what he said he was going to do. He did not want to be known as a crazy. The judge appointed a psychiatrist to go interview him, and Richard threw him out after 30 minutes. He wanted everybody to know he did what he wanted to do and did it for a reason.
And he didn't care about killing human life. It meant nothing to him. Just a person I kill, I get.
If they acquiesced to his commands, they lived. If they didn't, they were killed. And he killed the obstacle, which was the men. That was the
right first, and then he'd be in there a little bit longer. Tom, your methodology is, you've talked about it. Like, you don't go in there with guns a-blazing. I mean, it's a psychological game for you, and you know what you're doing. How many times when you're interrogating somebody, investigating somebody, they think they're going to outsmart you? Because you see that all the time. They think they can outsmart the lieutenant detective.
You might know somebody like that, kiddo.
yeah. I think
if you listen to that interview that people talk about, it was like 11.
The first one with OJ? Is that what you're talking about? Right away. Right when he got back from Chicago?
Which was not admitted, was not part of the trial.
That part, which was dumb.
Which is, if anybody hears this tape.
There's 11 inconsistent statements in there. Why? They never put it on. I mean, that's evidence. Why would you not put something like that on?
I never understood that.
It's so obvious. Well, again, we talk about this too. It's going to be cops on trial with that much evidence. You've got to go after the cops. Marcia knew that. I had more problems with her on direct than Johnny Cochran on cross, and I was on the stand for 8 days. Johnny didn't bother me at all. I know exactly where he was coming from. We used to joke about it. And then when we'd take a break or something, he and Carl Douglas, we'd joke about it, have a cup of coffee. Oh, you got me on this one. No, you didn't get me on that. I know where he was coming from.
That's amazing.
Marcia, my prosecutor, I had no idea what the hell she was going to ask next.
I have a question of my colleague. He just hit on stuff. Did you find that you got along better with defense attorneys than the prosecution?
On this case?
on any of them?
There were times, yes.
Yeah,
this is one of them.
I got along better with defense attorneys than I did with the prosecution side.
Yeah.
With the exception of Phil Halpin. Phil Halpin was great, and Phil Halpin didn't trust me around the. He used to always get to me. He's always pointing his finger at me.
Yeah.
And in the trial, I gave him a wooden hand with a finger like this. And he was so good to the cops. Unless you were a lazy cop, you'd have your ass. But I found myself getting along. Prosecutors for the most part were win-win-win at any cost.
Yeah.
They didn't give a shit about cops. They didn't give a shit about surviving victims or witnesses.
Yeah.
Defense attorneys had to play both sides because, they have a job to do, but yet they didn't want to alienate us. And so I got along better with defense attorneys.
But don't you think that's part of the job of a defense attorney to make them like you?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Defense attorneys aren't dumb. They're smart.
Right.
Why would you piss off the guy that you're going to be a witness? You don't want to make them mad.
Sure.
They're not dumb, and so that's true in a lot of cases. It was especially true in Simpson for whatever reason, which was a joke. This whole thing never should have been on live television. There should never been. There was only 2 people gagged during the whole thing. Who was gagged? Not the defense attorneys, not the prosecutor, me and my partner. Why would you gag us?
You drank too much.
Maybe that was it. It could have been it.
Yeah, Cato's the only person that's been accused of being hostile by Marsha Clark. She's the only person on this planet that's called you hostile.
Yeah. And
Hostile witness, Cato Kalin.
Like I said,
One
back
of the,
then I
one of
had
the
no idea
dumber
what that
things
meant.
that occurred. Why in the hell would somebody right in the middle of this, you're going to declare them a hostile witness? Even if you were hostile or not, it doesn't matter. I would not say that in open court. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, when that happened, I knew it was over. And then once you wouldn't put on, I got 3 typewritten pages of evidence that should have been put on, would have convicted anybody. She didn't put any of that on because she knew cops on trial.
God, you know every tell in a criminal. You've seen it all, both you. When you first met with OJ, when he got back from Chicago, was there any one thing more than anything else that stood out to you?
Yeah.
Because the bloody finger, everything.
How are my kids? What are my kids? So what happened? 2 people got killed in my house. My kids are in that house.
Never brought up.
No, I brought it up. I talked to him on the phone. I thought that'd be the first thing. He was not a suspect initially until the glove turned up. But just before the glove, I was on the phone with him. Nothing about the kids. All right, I'll be on the next flight. Well, we'll pick you up. No, I'll get there. I'll get there okay. Not a damn thing about the kids.
Did he fake crying or fake emotion or anything like
He's a
that?
sociopath. He can do anything he wants. It becomes obvious after a while, anybody like that. Again, you talk about interrogation and interview. The last thing you're going to do is interrogate somebody like that because he'd have walked.
I never asked this question. Did you make the call to Chicago at the Hilton?
Initially, no. It was Phillips, Ron Phillips.
And that was after the fact. Ron Phillips is
That was
talking
at Rockingham.
that morning after I.
Yeah, and then he called back and said he's on his way. That's when I talked to him.
And is that taped or not taped, that call?
No, it's not taped.
It's not taped.
It was his residence phone.
It was his phone. Okay.
And
That's interesting. I never knew that.
That's the first thing. 2 young kids in his house when
His
their mother
kids?
was slaughtered with another guy, and he's not asking how they're doing.
Or where they are? Or
Yeah,
anything
where
like
are they?
that.
How are my kids? Are my kids okay? I've got 2 kids, and I've got a bunch of grandkids now, and they're number one. They're my family. I want to know what happened. My God, are the kids okay? So when that happened, I knew this guy's more than a person of interest.
Yeah.
And that's when you knew you weren't dealing with a real human. Because if you
Well,
can't
yeah.
ask that question,
No.
something's missing. You're void.
Well, yeah, you're a sociopath. They're not important to me.
Yeah. And so when he comes in from Chicago and all that, you already have that in your mind. And,
Oh, yeah.
and Phil Vanetta, you're kind of like
But then what's the next thing you see? His fingers bleeding on the left side, the left hand, where the blood is.
defensive wound hit, or he cut himself.
And he certainly didn't leave town with it. Or, I mean, like an hour before,
Well, the
right?
other
I mean,
thing,
because
we got-
Cato saw him an hour before, and he certainly
Well,
didn't have a bloody finger then.
No,
Yeah.
we got 3 different stories about the bloody finger.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, the bag that he wanted to grab, a little half-moon-shaped travel bag that you were going to help him with.
Yeah.
You didn't see that. And the guy at the airport
Well,
sees
also,
him taking stuff out of that and put
Skip
them in the
Jennings.
container.
yeah.
Come on.
Also, I kept going. Why they keep asking me questions about a hand? Because I didn't. This wasn't evidence yet about a cut finger. I don't think that came out right away.
No.
So they're asking me. I'm going. Why? His hand. Yeah, his hand was okay. So I didn't know anything. Like I'm going. They
Yeah.
keep asking questions, like 12 questions about his hand. Did you notice his hand? His hand. And so then it makes obviously.
No.
Gil, it's such a contrast because, the OJ trial was larger than life, and then it had its ebbs and flows, and then you could kind of see where it was going south, right? Was there ever a shot or a chance that Ramirez wouldn't be convicted in that trial? Like, could something dramatic have happened where he would have got out? Is it impossible?
No, I don't think so. We had a pretty solid case. There was one case that stood on its own. And so the defense said, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and ask for a severance. We'll start with that case, finish that one, then we'll go on to the remaining 13. And
what does the severance mean? What is it?
That they were going to separate from, we filed 14 counts of murder. There was one case that stood on its own. So they were going to go ahead and ask the judge.
13 are lumped and one is on its own.
One on its own. And we'll be ready. Let's start with the number one. And so the judge listened to them and he said, okay, well, we'll render a decision tomorrow. And he says, however, I'm telling you, you have to be ready tomorrow. If you say you're ready and I grant your motion, well, then we start on that case. If I don't, you have to be ready on all of them. They said, we understand. He said, okay. So went home next day, Halpin comes into court and he says, okay, Mr. Halpin, you know, we've got the severance motion and the court is inclined to grant their severance motion. Do you have anything to say on behalf of the people? He said, yes, Your Honor. He says, people would like to dismiss that case in the interest of justice. And he said, are you sure? He says, yes, sir. We want to dismiss it in the interest of justice. That way it's thrown out. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We've got 13 more murders ready to go. And that one was a circumstantial case. That was, we knew we had it, but that was the only one that we couldn't link to the other ones. And so he looked at the defense counsel. He says, I grant their motion to dismiss. We're done. We're ready to, let's start on the other ones. And he said, oh, Your Honor, well, wait, we weren't ready. He said, hey, I told you to be ready. You'll be back here in court at 1 o'clock, 1:30 this afternoon, and we start trial. So they dismissed that one, then we went. So the other ones, they were solid.
Yeah.
They were solid.
But you look at Ramirez, what's not to hate? You look at Simpson, good-looking guy, big athlete, famous person.
2 years after the riots.
Ramirez looks exactly like he is.
Yeah, he's a poster child for a serial killer.
Reality, you know, if it was 4th and 3, I'd still give the ball to OJ.
Especially going through an airport.
Yeah. You know, I heard you talking during a break to Tom, and you mentioned to Tom, you know, I just deal with 3 S's, the 3 S's. First of all, what are the 3 S's and what did it mean?
I was told when I first got there, being the youngest guy in Homicide Bureau, and I really thought that they were going to dump all over me because I hadn't paid my dues, as they say. And it was just the opposite. They assured me that I had a reputation to uphold of the Bureau and we'd all work together and I better ask questions. Because if I didn't, and I did something on my own and screwed it up, I'd be gone the next day. Mm-hmm. And he says, up here we solve cases the old-fashioned way, 3 S's. Scotch, snitches, and shoe leather. That's how you solve murders.
My S's are completely off then.
What do you think it was, Cato? Shampoo?
Shampoo, that's a good one. Shampoo, styling, shampoo. No, that's good advice though, right? And it works.
Yeah, I still don't like Scotch, but...
They probably don't hear that today with it.
No, they don't do it.
No.
Oh, Lord, they don't do it.
Oh, that's not politically correct. Come on, man. No, heck no.
No, big changes.
Yeah. So you were in the courtroom for every day of the Ramirez trial, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
How long was that?
Probably about 3 months, 4 months.
Okay. So you got a firsthand view of the groupies and these women that would show up.
Yeah.
His little fan club. Did anything about that surprise you, or had you seen everything at that point?
No, some of them did surprise me. They had the devil worshipers, Satan worshipers show up. We had a lot of high school, a lot of field trips going there. You know, they'd pass them through and they'd let them see part of the thing. A lot of attorneys go through there to see what was going on. And I can remember one day specifically that Richard did the same thing every day. He walked in a courtroom and he'd scan the courtroom and find out where the pretty women were or what he liked. And then he'd turn around and he'd face the front of the courtroom. And then come for recess, he'd stand up and he'd turn around and he'd start staring at the ones, and they knew who we wanted to look at. There were these 2 attorneys, came in with their briefcases, dressed to the tens. They were drop-dead gorgeous.
Not working on the case, just
not
there?
working on the
watching?
case, just watching. And they went in there, and the bailiff comes over and he says, Gil, they want you on the phone. So I go over to the desk where the bailiff's at, and I'm talking on the phone, and now they're going to take a recess, and Richard gets up and walks out, and he's looking right at the girls, and the one sitting on the end looks at him,
No
An
way.
attorney.
blows him a kiss, and spread her legs.
No, come on.
Spread them open. I went back and told Frank, I said, hook me up. I want to see if it works for me. So those people.
Sharon Stone was an attorney?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah,
That
so-
is crazy.
That,
You know what?
are you sure there was an attorney, though, or just dressed to the T's looking like an
No,
attorney?
they were attorneys. No doubt in my mind, they were
She's
attorneys.
You know, isn't it crazy? The one thing that you said that motivated him, that like propelled him to this
Sex.
life, it was sex.
Yeah.
And he's going to prison and never having it again.
There was a female that every day during prelims, she was there. She was a Filipino young lady, and her name was Bernadette. And matter of fact, the lady that did the sketch artist, because the cameras weren't allowed, and
Yeah.
cameras weren't allowed in there then, and so she actually did a sketch artist of Bernadette. She was there every day. So after the trial, I asked Rich. I said, "Hey, Rich, whatever happened to Bernadette?" He said, she stopped coming around. She kept trying to call me, trying to talk him into Catholicism, come back to Christianity, come back to be Catholic again. Forget this. He says, and I kept telling her, no, I can't. He says, the last time I heard, I talked to her into it, and she was doing porno. So
Bernadette.
from Christianity to porno, whether it happened or not, that's what
well,
he
tell
says.
me. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was saying, it was Ramirez. Was he schizophrenic, or was he just? We don't know.
I talked to him, and he talked to me just normal as could be, more articulate than any other murder suspect that I've ever spoken with.
Yeah, I actually, a long time ago, this is before I got married, dated a girl that was schizophrenic, and I told her, that's great, that makes 4 of us. Seriously, that was just for Gil. I said, that'll work out, that's great for all 4 of us.
Oh my God! You know, the crazy thing about Ramirez, he did have that look, right, with the high cheekbones. Where if he wasn't a psychopath killer, maybe he could have been a model or something. But the thing that brought him down was the teeth. By leaving the fingerprint on the card for the dentist.
By the time we went to they did. By the time we finished trial, a county dentist went up there and testified. He's quite proud of what he had done to Richard's teeth. He went up there and testified that he made him good, and
Wow. Little too late. Tom, when you were Tom Lange, the stories that are attached to his career are unbelievable. As you were chasing John Holmes, the porn star, through, I believe it was Coral Gables, Florida, on the Wonderland case, were you thinking of converting him to Catholicism? Was there any hope? Could you?
That really never came up. I don't know where that was.
But that's a true story. How did that happen where you're working on this case here in LA, one of the most brutal crime cases there are ever, where they said, get your galoshes on as you go in to record the crime scene for the first time ever in LA, and then you're running through Miami trying to catch Holmes. Tell us that story.
Well, a little involved, but he, of course, was a suspect, and we found his palm print on a bed railing above Lanius, one of the victims' skull. It would have been fragmented, actually. And we find out that Holmes was terrified of Ron Lanius, who was a psychopath himself, also good for a couple of murders, but now he's a murder victim. So what was he doing in his room? Well, Lanius would never have allowed him in his room, yet we got his palm print on the bed railing above the body, as if one would secure themselves here as they're coming down on the skull with a lead pipe. Of course, later on we find out we got the husband-wife privilege. That comes up again. Sharon, his wife, tells us, he came home that morning, he had blood all over him. I drew a bath for him.
Like
Water
all
was
over.
nice
He was drenched
He
in
was
blood.
drenched in blood. She gives me all of this story, but we can't use it. She's not going to testify against him. So we know damn well he was a suspect. Why would these killers let him live unless he took part in the killings? So there's no question. We had a solid warrant and everything else, but when things got tight, he took off. I was working with a guy who had a thought on this, and that was with Holmes's girlfriend at the time. Her family lived up in Oregon. So let's go talk to the family, where we find out his girlfriend had a brother who didn't like Holmes. One thing led to another, and we wanted to know where John was, and the kid finally rolled over. He said, well, he's down in Florida. So we got a couple of phone numbers that he'd used that they had on their phone bill. One thing led to another, and we figured he's down in Florida, so we went down to Florida, and we found out where he was staying at a motel. He dyed his hair, dyed his beard. He'd grown a longer beard. He'd painted his car, the car that they took off with. Forgot to change the plates, I guess. This motel was under renovation, and he was been hired as a part-time worker. So we were going to stake on the hotel. We had Miami PD. We'd tied in with them. I had 8 different people surrounding the motel when he showed up. Had a warrant. So we waited for him. We set up across the street, and it wasn't 2 minutes later, out comes John Holmes from one of the rooms. So I got on the radio and said, "We've got him. I'm going to go over and get him." So I went over there, and I got my 2-inch, and I got up next to the door, and he had left this party next to his room, and he laid down in his bed. He was lying there, and he left the door open. The air wasn't working. It was very warm outside as it gets in Florida. So I just peeked around the corner, and I said, "John, put your fucking hands where I can see him." "Oh," he said, "what took you so long? You know, I knew you." Oh, bullshit.
You said, when you said you brought in your 2-inch, John Holmes says,
Yes.
"Excuse me,
I got my 2-footer.
So he rolled over, and one thing led to another. And then he's joking around until the following day when he got a little more solemn.
Wow.
And he knew he was going back. But we felt we'd had a case, and we did.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that he was part of the group that killed everybody in that house. We weren't able to use it for a lot of reasons. But again, the celebrity thing came in, and for some reason, juries in L.A., they like celebrities. You know, they had the Blake case, and there's so many others that you can look at.
The Blake case, yeah.
They just don't want to convict. And if you put the cops on trial, you get a downtown jury. 2 days after Rodney King, you got one of the rogue cops who pleads the fifth. Come on. This is going to be easy.
Right.
We don't care if he did it or not. Basically, that's what they're saying. And there's nothing, any case, go back beyond this. The first thing you're going to look for in a murder investigation as an investigator is something exculpatory, so you can deal with that. You got to know what the negative stuff is to deal with it before you get the good stuff, the inculpatory evidence. This is a rare case. I'd say a 10%er that did not have anything exculpatory. Everything was inculpatory on that case of a substantive nature. There was nothing that says, like, we got a bloody footwear impression that's size 10. It can't be his size 12. That's where I got the shoes. I took the shoes to size him, not because they had blood on them. Everything was inculpatory in this case.
The shoes, that's inculpatory.
Inculpatory because he wears size 12. If we had size 10 with a bloody footwear impression at the scene, that's exculpatory. That's enough to say, no way in hell he could have done this. That's why the shoes were so important. But nothing exculpatory, that means something. So why they came around, obviously, cops on trial. And then the Furman thing just knocked it out of the park.
So you had O.J. was an actor, I guess you could say, Holmes, and then you mentioned earlier Frank
Frank Christie.
What's that? Crime?
He was an old actor. He was in a lot of organized crime.
Mafia movies.
What was the big one back in the...
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, Godfather.
Casino.
Godfather.
Casino. Godfather.
The Irishman.
Nuts.
Let's see, what was another big one? Sopranos? Sopranos? TV show?
No.
Okay.
There was
Donnie Brasco.
No, it's...
The Valachi Papers. that was older.
There was a couple of them where he was a goomba, right? And he took a lot of this into his personal life. He was kind of a wise ass.
Yeah.
And with the wrong guy, because he was doing a young woman who...
It's L.A., by the way.
L.A. case. He lived in the Hollywood Hills. He was doing a girlfriend of an organized crime figure by the name of Friedberg. Wrong thing to do. So he hired this group of thugs to kill Frank, and they were waiting for him. They went up to his place up off of Coldwater Canyon, up off of Mulholland, and it was lying in wait. And they blasted him a couple of times, missed with a shotgun. Then the third guy was waiting outside and got him with a 38 as he's coming right out the driveway to his house. One thing led to another. It took a couple of years to put together. We did a back thing with America's Most Wanted too, when we identified the three suspects, and they had fled up to Seattle. But it was a murder for hire, a classic murder for hire, and we ended up getting them up there, and they were all convicted of that. One of them rolled over. He was dying of cancer with a dying declaration, something that doesn't often happen. The suspect can give what the law calls a dying declaration. There has to be certain things in place. And, of course, he has to die. So we got a dying declaration from one of the suspects, who happened to be the driver. And with that dying declaration, we're able to convict them all on that.
You know, it's funny. I heard you talking about the shoes, the Bruno Mali for OJ, the size 12, talking about exculpatory evidence. You were chasing shoes, too. And wasn't it also size 12 that Ramirez had, the
Yes.
Adidas? Yeah.
But the ones that got dumped in the...
Yeah, it
Sounds like you can't
over
even
the
get
Golden
your
Gate
foot in the
Bridge.
door.
Yeah, little did you know you'd be chasing.
Talk about frustrating, with that. Oh, my God. I heard that, and I said, yeah, I thought we had a dad.
Oh,
Not at a press conference, please,
Right, a press con where she's just like gravy training and trying to just grab the glory, act like a hero. Is there any scenario where LA sheriffs could have had the OJ case and you guys could have had Ramirez and Night Stalker?
Depends on where it happened.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
That's all it
crazy?
is, it's just
How
where
it
it
changes
happened.
lives and just everything that's
But
involved.
we only had, what, one or two of the Night Stalkers?
Yeah. You had out in Sun Valley, you had one. Northeast Division had one. There was one June of '84. And we're working the case. I get a phone call from a homicide cop out there. And he says, and we got live prints, but Richard didn't have prints on file. They weren't automated then.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, just hold on to them when we get our suspect, and they come back, bring it all together. And they did. It was Jenny Benkow on June the 28th of 1984. That was your case out there. Sun Valley was your case. There was an attempt kidnapping in Foothill Division. And that was about it.
Again, that was the big bugaboo back then, the lack of communication. And it causes a lot of problems. And I wondered today if they still have that problem.
Maybe.
You meet with a cup of coffee in the morning, let's have breakfast and talk, or tonight, let's have a couple of drinks. When the drinking thing comes in again, you'd be surprised what gets accomplished with a few
I believe
homicide
it.
cops and a few
Because
cocktails.
you finally get to take a break. Or
Well, not
catch
only
your
a
breath.
break,
Yeah.
it's emotional break,
Yeah.
but you exchange information. It's not official, but then everything is official.
Yeah.
You get a lot done doing that, and that's our communication.
Right.
There's not enough of that, quite frankly. And I
Right.
wonder about
it's
that
a good
today.
and it's a release for you.
And it just depends on who's looking at it. I remember I worked a triple homicide in South Central, and we were out there and we were being followed by one of these cop programs, like Cops or something like that. They were with us all night, and
They're with you when you say they have a separate car. Or
they're in a separate car. They're just out there filming everything, and we're mic'd up.
TV show, Cops.
Yeah,
cops.
and they're doing this, and the producer quit, because the local residents were upset. They started yelling and screaming because the bodies were out there, although they were covered. They were out there. They didn't realize we had to wait till the coroner's office. We're doing a crime scene, so they're upset. They go, so worked it all night long. I go straight from a triple homicide that night, being up all night. I drive over to East LA Station where I took off my suit and tie and donned a Santa Claus outfit because I was scheduled to be in a parade that day. So I go out there, I'm in a parade, and I'm riding on a float, and I'm waving to all the kids, and it was really something special. And this cop program, they follow me out there, they're doing it. They see me another day in a Santa Claus outfit, riding on a fire engine, going to elementary school, interacting with all the little kids. And then one day we're done. I mean, we've been burning the midnight oil.
Yeah.
And so what now? I said, well, let's go down. We're not going to be down here in downtown LA. Now we're going to be over Watering Hole on the east side, so it's not that far to drive. So they said, do you mind if we go down there? And I said, you can go down there. I said, but you can stay for one drink, and then that's it. You guys got to go. Because they won't be the same. So they go out there, they film it, they air the program, and they did very positive light. Even the one drink that they were out there, very positive publicly. Yeah. One of our lieutenants committed suicide. Didn't get promoted to captain, I guess. I don't know what he.
Oh, wow.
He had committed suicide, so the head of psychological services for our department, the shrinks, comes up to me, and I'd done some team teaching. She says, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm doing good." She says, "Good." She said, "How are the guys from Homicide doing over this?" I said, "They're handling it. You know, we're used to dealing with death, and this is part of the job." And she says, "I saw your TV show the other day." And I said, "Oh, what'd you think?" She says, "Well, I saw you drinking. I saw you in a bar." And all of a sudden, I just, like, you're putting a flame right up my ass. And I just looked at her and I said, "You know, did you see me at the triple homicide working all night and go straight from there to put on a Santa Claus outfit for kids and be in a parade?" I said, "Did you notice that I was in a fire engine going to an elementary school for kids?" I said, "Did you see when we did the search warrants to get all this stuff out?" I said, "Or is all you saw was me going to a bar?" I said, "What does it take to make you people happy?" And I turned around, I walked away. You know, so some people see it good things, some people don't.
Yeah, and they're just wired that way. But man, that would be insulting. Give me a break.
Oh,
You're doing your job.
It was insulting.
Yeah.
She's lucky that you went easy on her.
I got, you know, every karma has its way of coming back around. That individual ended up leaving the department, driving under the influence.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Are you kidding?
Good.
That is karma at its finest. That is unbelievable.
And again, you can't let those things get to you, and you didn't.
No.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be worth a damn. Yeah.
This will be my last question, but always something that intrigued me is, Tom, because you mentioned murder for hire. I don't know if those are the most difficult to solve, but there was something that happened, and you were in this area, I think both of you were, was the Mickey Thompson. Do you remember Mickey Thompson? He had the races. Mm-hmm. And they always said there were two guys on bikes.
Yes.
But they murdered up in a beautiful area up in the hills. I think
yes,
in Pasadena.
Bradbury Estates.
Bradbury. Okay, so is that by Pasadena?
No, it's up Monrovia, up Doherty, up in the hills over there.
Really beautiful home. And I don't think that was ever solved, or am I wrong? It wasn't.
They prosecuted Mickey Thompson's partner. They prosecuted him, but they never got the two guys that actually killed him.
So the guy that got prosecuted obviously was in prison. Yes. He never kind of told on that. He held it. Yeah. Held it in. And
murder for hire. He hired the two guys, and they prosecuted him for the murder.
It's a really, I don't know if that case. It's a really incredible
The guy
case.
that from our department that put that case together, brilliant.
That was your department.
That was Mark Lilienfield, brilliant investigator. My wife and family knew that if anything ever happened to me, demand the department put him on a case, because he's one of these guys that thinks outside the box. Mm-hmm. And he's great, and he doesn't let the brass, anybody interfere with his cases. A female deputy from our department got murdered, and she preferred females. And so at her funeral, he went to the wake, and he told mortician, the people that run the mortuary with, okay, when everybody's ready to go, close up and lock it up. He says, close the casket, lock it up. I'm going to wait here. And when they come back, he says, I want you to open it back up again. He says, I want to see if one of the ladies here or anybody put a message inside her coffin. And they opened it back up, and bigger than shit, there was a message in there. And I'm saying, God damn it, Mark. And it wasn't a confession. It was just another female, a friend of hers, saying she was going to miss her. She loved her, and so on and so forth. He put the case together, that particular case, and he got people not only from my agency but outside the agency, tatted down. They looked like hardcore gangbangers. Put them in a TST bus, went up to the joint because of two suspects who he didn't have enough on. He had them violated. So they were coming down from the joint. So he had the bus go up there. The bus was wired, and everybody on that bus was a cop. And the guys came down thinking they'll open up, they'll start talking to these guys. got them, booked them over into IRC, our jail here. And not only did they get enough of a cop out from these guys to successfully prosecute them, they also popped one of the guy's mothers for destruction of evidence. And that's just Mark. And he's the guy that put that Mickey Thompson case
Amazing.
back there. The guy's brilliant.
So Mickey Thompson, how long did that case take? Did he break the case? Was it years or was it?
It was years because the first team that handled it didn't. They were insufficient. Let us say they were insufficient, and then Mark took it over.
Amazing.
Another point of interest, you're talking to people and crimes being solved and how they get solved. Some of them are already solved to some extent. When you realize it, you move on. Case in point, organized crime murder. It was a double murder in L.A. we had. There was a guy by the name of Restrepo, Colombian, here from Florida, from South Florida. And he came out with another guy from Venezuela, and they were moving dope. Well, they came to L.A. to go to business. The Restrepos were under a federal indictment in Florida. They are a Colombia cartel. This is in mid-'80s, I guess. So these two come out here, and that was the wrong thing to do because they ended up dead, tortured, wrapped in tarp and dumped up in the Dodger Stadium, 2 different locations. We found the bodies. There were cigarette burns, cuts, beatings.
Sending a message, right?
They were tortured.
Yeah.
Also on the bodies were several $100s in cash, gold jewelry, wristwatches, all on the body. There's clearly a message killing. Then they wrap them in tarp, tie that down, dumped one up right outside of Dodger Stadium, one a couple blocks down. So we get this thing, we do the backgrounds and everything else. And the Restrepo family is in New York, and they're living on Biscayne Bay, just south of Miami. We want to interview the family. Well, the family is under federal indictment. They're not going to talk to us. But the father and the mother are under the indictment. Well, we got to try. So it set something up, and we said, yeah, we'll talk to you. Okay, well, we're handling the death of your son. Again, a gruesome murder, message murder. So he says, yeah, so we go down there, and we go to this beautiful home overlooking Biscayne Bay with a view right on the bay, 180 degrees. And there's all these guys sitting around. We know they were bodyguards. The lawyers are there. They invite us in. They're very courteous. Can we get you something to drink? Can we do this? Can we do that? Meanwhile, I'm working with the locals down there. They've had a lot of these Columbia murders down there in South Florida. I say that, we can talk to that family. I don't know how far we're going to get, but we'd like to know if he can tell us what his son is doing here in L.A. And so we met the father. We apologize for bothering them. We're sorry about your son and everything else, but you understand, Mr. Restrepo, we're here to do a job. And everybody's standing around and looking at us. We're very respectful. And we said, we'd really like to know what occurred. And I put this one in the book. He says, detectives, I appreciate what you've done. Appreciate you coming here and everything else. I love my son very much. But you have to understand, business is business. Okay, thank you, sir. We appreciate you seeing us, talking to us today. Well, and we walked out and we left. And we got to talking because we had several meetings planned that day with the locals. They're not going to solve this case. The case has already been solved. They've already taken care of the killers. I don't know where their bodies are, but it's all done. The message was so clear from this guy. They're not going to talk about anything. But we're never going to make arrests because they're dead too.
Yeah.
So you let that one slide. That's exactly what happened. So just when you think you got all this stuff together, you don't have shit. It's already been done.
Right.
You got to understand that.
Yeah.
Yep, they have their own form of justice, right?
Yeah,
and
it's done.
Save a few steps.
Save it.
Right.
We'll do what we got to do. We'll go through the steps. And the family was just business is business.
Yeah, and that's the business they're in, where that kind of stuff happens. Yeah. Well, this has been unbelievable, guys. Maybe we'll do it again. We'll always keep that open invitation. This was fantastic. Tapping into your knowledge, your experience, your storytelling. I know everybody loved it. How could you not? By the way, These two should be in a movie. They should be a movie on their lives. So who should play them? Kato, that'd be a good question for our audience. Who should play Gil? Who should play Tom Lange? What actors? Maybe a Tom Selleck at his prime for Tom Lange.
I'm going to go a little different. Dolly Parton.
Hey, guys, this was fantastic. Thanks for making the effort. Really appreciate it. We appreciate everything about you guys, your career, just your accomplishments.
Cathartic.
One last
kinda
toast.
neat.
It's fun to talk about. Hey,
I want Danny DeVito to play me.
okay, Danny DeVito, we can work on that.
we're gonna
Okay,
get that.
cheers. Thanks so much, guys. Everybody I know enjoyed it. So load us up with comments. Follow the K train. He's got a lot going on, and we will get these guys on again sometime
Yep.
down the road if they're
I'll
up
see
for
this
it.
man soon, too.
Yep, they're making their trip up to Napa. All right, so thanks. This has been unbelievable. 3 great episodes with Tom, 2 with Gil and Tom together, and you can't do better than this for crime
fantastic.
stories. It's the best there is. All right, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'm Tom Zenner, and we will see you very, very soon.